What happens when your worst fear becomes your reality? Hi, I'm Brent Cassidy. Welcome to the Nightmare Success In and Out podcast, where we explore how to overcome your fears and nightmares to set yourself free. We're going to be exploring this topic with guys I was in Leavenworth with. We're going to be talking about life before prison, life in prison, and life out of prison. These stories can be inspiring, sometimes sad. There's some humor. But hopefully you can come away with a nugget of something that will help you knock down some of the prisons you've built up in your own mind. Folks, today I have Sean McFarland with me, and it's cool because I was just telling Sean before we got on. Sean, when he was at Leavenworth, you know, there's all kinds of different characters at Leavenworth. Hey, and welcome, Sean, by the way.
Yeah.
But Sean, you know, his background was, you know, being around a farm, but his other part of his world is that he was really good with instruments. He could play guitar. I don't know what all you can play, but it seemed like you could play anything. And so whenever we would have little events, it seemed like we were kind of getting like a touch of home because we were getting live music from somebody that could actually sing. So it was kind of cool. So Sean, thanks for that. We didn't have, without Sean McFarland, we really didn't have that at Leavenworth Prison.
There was a couple of us, and we found each other, and it was the same kind of joy for me, you know.
It was great, and you know, even sometimes I remember we had, you know, at the visiting center, I think it was like, I don't know, it was Easter or something like that, where you guys actually played outside in the little visiting area there. And I don't even remember what the event was, but you guys, you sounded good. And, you know, my kids and everybody were there and they said, wow, Dad, those guys are actually good.
There was I think one or two times they let that happen. One time was Labor Day. I remember that.
Maybe that's what it was, because it was warm enough that we were all outside.
Mm-hmm.
Take me back, Sean. What was Sean doing in the world? I know you grew up on a farm. I am assuming you grew up on a farm because that's where you've seemed to want to be.
You know, honestly, I actually didn't grow up on a farm.
Okay.
My parents both came from farm backgrounds.
Okay.
But I grew up a military brat.
Wow. See, I didn't know that.
Now, every Christmas and summer, we'd return to the farm, one farm or another farm. But I actually spent all of my childhood on military bases and or big cities.
You know, they always say that kids that grow up as a military family, that you really have to figure out, you know, because you move so much, how to fit in, because you're always the new person getting to a new place. I mean, did you feel that way when you were growing up as a kid?
Oh yeah. I never had friends. You wouldn't know from talking to me now. I figured out how to socialize in my adulthood, but as a kid, it was pretty difficult for me. Just looking back on it.
What would have been like difficult as far as moving around and doing all the things that you did?
Well, so we moved at the beginning of summer, and I move into a neighborhood, and I have no friends to bike around the neighborhood with.
Yeah.
I mean, boom, one summer gone. You move in the middle of the school year.
Yeah.
And for the rest of the whole school year, you're just a new kid, and you don't have those bonds that are created that first day in homeroom or whatever, you know, and then I would make the bonds, and then they would get broken, and I would make the bonds, and they would get broken, and on one hand, it made it so that we were just talking about me being really good at being in the present.
Yeah.
I know so many people that like keep in touch with the kid that they went to high school with,
Sure.
Their old friends they were friends. I don't have any of those people in my life. I don't have any of they don't exist. I've got one friend from high school that I reconnected with, and we chat once in a while, just about life and stuff. But like, I just don't have any of that. However, what I do have is a very big appreciation for what's in front of me. And I've learned how to really commit to who's in front of me, to what's in front of me, and to do right here, right now, and then to be able to walk away from it and do something else.
I think that's
and
a good
I think
tip.
that's actually served me in my adult life.
Yeah, I'd say that's a good tip for life, though. Be in the present,
Yeah.
look forward and be all you can be in the present, because that's what you're affecting right at the moment. So
right. And I don't mean to skip too far into, the interview or anything here, but I mean that mindset I had going into prison, through prison,
that was your strategy.
Getting out of prison.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's good. I guess that would be a learned strategy as you did as a kid. I mean, did it get harder when you were getting older, like in high school moving? Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. It's when I really started to notice friends that had been friends for 2 and 3 years. And because like in grade schools, you're cycling through friends anyways, and you're friends with whoever your mom's, has whoever your parents' friends as kids are your friends. And as you become into high school, you start to own your friends.
Right.
But I found myself not getting to own those friends. I typically would spend on average 2 years in a location, but sometimes as little as 6 months.
Wow.
Yeah.
What was family life like moving around like that? I mean, your siblings, what was the family unit?
The family unit was really close. I had 2 sisters, 1 brother, so
okay.
4 of us kids, and definitely it was taught, and it was also a necessity that we all relied on each other, and
probably made you closer, I would think, because
yeah,
you moved around so much. You kind of even got closer as a family unit.
Yeah, I mean, my immediate family are the closest human beings to me in my life, and we sat down for dinner as a family.
Yeah.
Was your dad, every possible opportunity.
Like in the movies, the dad in the military is the strict guy. Was he a strict dad?
Oh yeah.
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 You're laughing at that. So, I mean, was he strict with all the kids? Was that just kind of the way he was, or did he have kind of a rhythm to the strictness of he was?
I mean, times? He was strict. He was strict. No, he was strict with all the kids, but he also, he was a loving dad. He loved to spoil us. He loved to blow money on us.
Yeah.
The girls always got, more favorability,
Yeah.
But definitely when it came to like, verbal respect,
yeah.
Quote unquote.
Yeah.
It was like, I definitely was treated as a subordinate, as a, I think the only way my dad knew how to relate to people was as a,
you were part of his army team.
As an officer.
Exactly.
Yeah. And my dad was a fast ascending, high ranking officer. So
okay.
It wasn't, military is military, but my dad was, my dad treated us like he treated his soldiers. Like,
I get it. I mean, it had to be, yeah. And then on top of that, you're moving around everywhere. So you guys had a lot going on. So you get out of high school, and went to college?
I went to a trade school to make guitars for a bit, and then decided that that's not what I wanted to really do with my life. And then I went to state college for horticulture, and started farming squash.
Okay. I want to know this though. Was music always in your life?
Oh yeah. My dad played guitar at an early age with us, and I actually, he told all of his kids we weren't allowed to touch his guitar. And I remember it was around age 14, I was interested in it, and I would pull his guitar out while he was away at work, and and sneak it back into the case. Well, one day he caught me,
Uh-oh.
and I thought, I was sure I was in trouble, but I wasn't. He had the rule for the kids not to break his guitar. There wasn't a rule against learning guitar. I just didn't know it.
So he probably found out that you might be pretty good at guitar playing.
Yeah. The second he caught me with it, he was like, I thought I was in trouble. And he's like, oh, you're interested in this? Let's show you some chords.
So music was always a thing. I guess maybe was that an easier way for you to get accepted in through like your growing up years because you were the guy that could sing and play instruments?
No.
That didn't
in
work.
In fact,
that way.
like, I don't know. I actually, because we could probably play psychologist on me here, but because I had a hard time, like, being accepted, I gravitated towards the punk rock crowd.
Gotcha.
Which
Wow.
Is the FU, I don't want to be accepted crowd.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, I definitely, I formed some bonds that way, and, you know, like, got that kind of identity. But it really wasn't until my mid-20s that I learned how to easily socialize, to be honest with you.
So I guess at some point you either like moving around a lot or you don't like moving around a lot. So I'm assuming as you got older, you didn't want to move as much. And we were talking about this before we got on. So you ended up in California, right?
Yeah.
So, and I know your case was that you got hemmed up of growing marijuana, which is interesting because a lot of people don't understand that growing marijuana can be legal in a lot of states and can be sold in a lot of states. Some it's medicinal, some it's recreational, some it's both. But federally, it's illegal.
It's all illegal. Yes, federally speaking.
Yeah.
And I believe it's called the Federal Superiority Clause or something like that, which basically means that if there's a state law and a federal law that are in conflict, the federal law wins.
Right. You lose your state law right. Yeah.
Right.
There's a 10th Amendment somewhere in there too, where you can try to argue that, but it doesn't work. So, Sean, how did this all happen? Because you get it, you decide you're not going to be doing making guitars, and you go to a little bit more college, you get out. How does this all evolve?
Yeah. So I go to college for horticulture, start farming squash, became successful farming squash.
Okay.
Squash was kind of an accident, but became quite successful farming squash. And
was it hard to find the land for that?
No, not right. No, up in the Midwest where I was going to school up in South Dakota here, we are overflowing in cultivatable acres with good rainfall.
Okay.
It's prime crop ground, and so I just rented. I rented my ground, and my brother moved out to California, and it was a secret almost at the time that everybody in California knew that they didn't really tell everybody else, and that is that you could grow marijuana in California and that it was legal. But I don't even know how to explain it. I went out for a visit and I just realized the culture was different, the acceptance was different, the legality was different. No cop was going to bust you for smoking a joint on the street, and you could walk into a store and walk out with plants and wave at a cop on your way out, and like it was regular farming, which it really should be in my opinion. But so I realized real fast that it was still an underground market, and it was still an underground. It was an underground thing. It operated in a gray zone,
okay,
where a lot of the growers were growing in greenhouses, where if you flew over, you couldn't see that it was marijuana. Therefore, they provided some protection against the federal.
Yeah,
side
I think
of
of the movie like Savages, where they were going for the best the best weed that they could, and they were growing it all in the greenhouse. I can't remember who all was in that. Have you seen that movie?
I did see that movie. I think I saw that.
Kind of violent.
We were probably sitting in a chair,
plastic chair,
with headphones in.
We did see that at Leavenworth.
Yeah, no. So it was an interesting gray space though, because I definitely was aware that it was federally illegal, but it also was so wide open that I couldn't imagine getting in trouble for it. You know, I just like every farmer grew pot. Every dairy farmer grew pot. Every pot
Everybody
farmer
that had
grew
land
pot.
basically grew pot.
Anybody that had land grew pot.
Yep.
So I took what I had in squash and I pulled all out and moved to California, bought land, and started growing medicinal marijuana. And I enjoy growing. Period. I fell into farming. You know, we were talking about I was raised in the city, but I found myself trying to go back to the farm more and more, and I just somehow found my calling in horticulture. Like, again, almost accidental. It kind of clicked. I was like, I want to grow plants.
It's your passion.
And
yeah, I get it.
And anyway,
so then you start growing this and you're good at it. So, does it get to be a big business for you?
Yeah. I'm definitely I think if I would have been less ambitious, I wouldn't have gone to prison. But I was definitely trying to grow the most I could grow and stay under the radar.
Yeah.
And eventually what got me is I made a legal sale to a legal buyer who took it across state lines and did illegal things with it.
Yep. And that made it federal because it went over state lines.
No, it was federal because it's federal. It wasn't the crossing of state lines that made it federal.
Okay. It
was the fact that where he got caught. Listen, if he would have gotten caught in California, even if they would have known that he was doing something illegal, like, so say he wasn't a licensed buyer, say he wasn't allowed to have it, it wouldn't have gone federal because they just have bigger fish to fry. But he went back to my, I'll call it my home state where a lot of my family is. He went back to my home state of South Dakota, and where he got caught, he got caught with 90 pounds of pot, which was just like mind blowing to everybody out there.
Okay.
And so because of the attention that he received, the federal government decided that it was a big enough case that they wanted in on it. And then started playing, detective and Rambo and figuring out where it was all coming from. And what's funny is I actually only sold him 5 pounds. I sold him 5 pounds of some of my less desirable pot, which I could have just, I honestly, I didn't need to sell it. I I could have processed it into oil. I could have sold it to a processor. He just asked me for some, so I sold him some. And I did know that he was going to cross state lines with it, but I also knew that he was a legal buyer, right, and that I didn't want to cross state lines with it. And I thought that somehow insulated me from it. But the fact that it was federally illegal, the second that the feds were at all involved in it, there just was no defense.
So how did you know, Sean? Did they just knock on the door and say, "Hey, Sean, we're looking into this"?
Oh man. Okay. So he got arrested a year earlier, like in the winter or something like that, or in the fall. And I remember thinking, I'm not going to grow this next year. And then as I got closer and closer, I'm like, yeah, I'm going to grow.
So like a year had gone by is basically what you're saying? So
yeah, 8 months or 9 months or something.
Yeah.
It's June. It's June And I get a call from my neighbor who always calls me with my friends are driving too fast past his house. I live up a very steep mountain, and my neighbors are like a mile down the road. There's a neighbor, another mile down the road. There's a neighbor, and it takes a long time to traverse up this crazy mountain road.
Okay.
And I get a call from my neighbor. I'm like, hey, John, what's going on? And he's like, nothing good. And I'm like, okay, what's going on? I'm expecting to hear about the brown truck with the ladder on top that's driving too fast. And I got to, when he gets there, I got to yell at him and be like, dude, you got to slow down past John's house.
Mm-hmm.
That's not what happened. He said, 12 unmarked vehicles just passed my house headed your direction.
Mm.
And I know that they're either heading to my place or the last place on the road, who's another grower, because everyone grows.
Mm-hmm.
And so in my sandals and my pajamas, because it was misting and raining, we'd taken the day off. Me and an employee got in my Subaru and just buzzed it down this old abandoned logging road that was on my property, and
in your pajamas.
And in my pajamas. We had pajamas. In the car there was one beer, one cigarette, and a towel.
Perfect. What an escape.
So it's raining all day.
Okay.
So we go and we get out of the car then and go and stick ourselves like in this nook and cranny in the mountain, like next to a waterfall. We smoke the cigarette, drink the beer, and I hike back into cell phone range periodically throughout the day, trying to figure out if they've come back down yet. No, they haven't come back down. We don't know for sure that they're at my place. They're either at my place or the other place. And so then I hike all the way up to my greenhouses, which sit below my house, and everything looks good. They're still covered in their tarps, which they would have had to take off if they were going to get into them. And so I figure everything's good. And then I noticed that, no, the tarps have been cut open, and my heart sinks. And then my dogs start running up to me barking. And then at the top of my hill, I hear all these doors shutting, and I'm sure that they're coming for me now. So I run back into the woods and hide for the rest of the day. At nighttime, I sneak back into cell phone range and call my friend, and he's actually up at my place right now. They're gone, and tells me to come on up, and I drive up to my place to see my house tossed, my crop destroyed, and
it's like a movie.
Oh yeah.
So what happened after that?
Well,
your place is tossed. They've taken and just trashed everything. And then are you wondering if somebody's lingering around looking for you, or are you thinking, oh, I guess that's over? Or are you thinking, oh shit?
Well, so no, the cool thing about where we lived is there was only one road in and out.
Okay.
And so we were actually able to get confirmation from several towns away that the whole convoy had left.
Okay.
And so we drove down to a friend of mine's house, and I proceeded to get drunk trying to decide what to do.
Mm-hmm.
And what I decided would be the best thing to do would be to go to town and get a lawyer.
Okay.
Now here's where I made the dumb decision, and that I went to my sister's house, and woke up the next morning, surrounded by AR-15s, and 20 armed federal agents, yelling at me to come out with my hands up, and they threw me to the ground and knee in the back, handcuffed behind I'm in my underwear, like I'm a smoking pot grower in his underwear. I swear I'm no threat.
Oh my God. So what in the world would have been going through your mind at that moment?
Why the hell did I come to my sister's house?
Mm-hmm.
Like,
did they just bust in and I mean, did everybody, how many people were in the house when this all happened?
It was my two sisters were at the house.
Okay.
And And actually, my sister knocked on the door. I'm all hungover, and she said, "They're here."
Mm.
And I'm like, "Who's here?" I was in a daze. And then I rolled over in bed and I looked out the window, and it's a ranch house, and eye level with me were loaded guns through the window at me.
Wow.
And so they yelled at me through the window to get up slowly with my hands up and walk out of the house. And so that's what I did.
They take you away in your underwear?
No, they let me put on pants.
That's good. That's good, Sean. So at least you weren't riding in the car with just your underwear.
I remember one of the biggest moments, you know.
Did you ever contact the attorney before that? Well, like when you were getting drunk?
No, I didn't come out of the woods until like 6 o'clock or something like that.
Uh-huh.
You know, so then I went in that night.
Yeah.
It
wasn't too late. Too late. Attorney's not working at 6. Yeah.
Why didn't I get a hotel?
Could have.
But
you certainly didn't probably think that they were going to be, putting big rifles in your face in the morning. But
I mean, my sister's house, that would have been the first place that I'd have gone if I was a cop.
So they take you away, and you're in this thing now. Do they book you, tell you your rights, put you in the county jail?
Well, before they took me away, this thing always stuck with me. This thing always stuck with me. You know the no snitch culture in prison.
Yes. Big deal.
It's a big deal. It's a big deal. So as they're tossing that house now, I'm handcuffed, sitting in a chair inside. The lead investigator from Homeland Security. I thought they were for terrorists. Anyways, so the lead investigator for Homeland Security sits me down in a chair and he says, "Sean, I'm going to go do some things. I'm going to come back and I'm going to offer you a deal." And I'm thinking in my head, deal. Okay, what's a deal? And I know they want me to give somebody up. And I'm thinking in my head, like, I know bad people in this business. I know bad people. Mm-hmm. I do. And for a moment, I know every tough guy would like to say, "I'd never snitch." There was a moment where I almost thought like, a bad guy.
Mm-hmm.
So then, like 20 minutes later or whatever, the Homeland Security guy comes back and he says, "All right, Sean, let's make a deal." I said, "Okay, what's the deal?" And he's like, "Well, deal is that you're going to tell me everything you know, and after you're in prison, a judge is going to look at you and say, how did Sean McFarland act when he was in between a rock and a hard place?" And I remember laughing so hard at him that I saw like veins pop in his head. He said all the wrong things.
Of what didn't persuade you, right?
What do you do when you're in a rock? My dad in the military, that was a phrase he would use, talk about what made a man a man.
Mm-hmm.
What would Sean McFarland do when he was in between a rock and a hard place? Act like a man.
Mm-hmm. And
I laughed at him, and then he got all flustered and he said, "How old are you?" And I spat back, "How old are you?"
Oh no!
And he said, "You're gonna be 40 before you get out of prison." And I just laughed at him.
How old were you, Sean? How old were you?
32.
32 at the time. Okay.
32. He wasn't as right as he thought.
Yeah.
How about that?
Yeah. And he was angry. So after he realizes that he's not talking you into what he wants, then they take you away, I guess.
Yes.
So
I was always proud. I was, like, I like that story because it's humanizing.
It is
like, because I can't tell you that like that there was no moment where I was like, "Oh, I would never."
Exactly.
I can tell you, like, there was some fear.
Crossed your mind.
And there was some fear, and in the end, I made the right decision.
Yeah, and he said the wrong thing to you. He made you come to your senses.
quick.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not saying
knowing that.
I'm not saying that I was inches away from it, but I'm just saying he got me feet away from it fast.
Yep. Interesting. So, Sean, how long did they keep you down there once they created this fiasco?
At the house while they were searching it?
No. I mean, once they took you away, did they basically bond you out and?
Oh, right. So they hauled me away in a cop car.
Yeah.
I had an arraignment date set in California for like a week later or something, or like maybe it was 3 days later. A judge in South Dakota basically talked to the judge in California and said, we're going to extradite him to South Dakota, and we would like if you didn't give him bond. So they didn't give me bond.
And the South Dakota thing happened because that's where that guy got.
That's where that guy got.
Yeah.
And if you understand anything about federal charges, they're all jurisdictional. Mm-hmm. So the charge I was getting was in the jurisdiction of the southeast part of South Dakota or whatever. Right. And so that's where I was going to go to face charges, even though it's federal.
Right.
It was a South Dakota jurisdiction.
Mm-hmm.
So they didn't bond me out. It took like 2 months to transfer me to South Dakota. I got a real quick introduction into jails and prison. I got transferred down to Oakland, where I got beat down by a crackhead that just came off the street. Lost a tooth. Ding.
Wow.
Thankfully I had a friend there that got him off my back. Then I got transferred. I went to like 10 different states eventually to make it back to South Dakota, where they bonded me out 3 days later.
Wow.
And I was like, you a-hole.
Wow.
If you'd have just shown up at my house and said, "Hey, Sean, we've got charges for you," I just said, "Oh shoot, let me pack a bag. I'll drive to South Dakota. I'll see you there."
Yeah.
I spent 2 months in the system just so that they could bond me out, and all the taxpayer dollars that went into that.
Oh, man. And that's a rude awakening for 2 months of hitting county jails and that and the violence in those places. I mean, I was only in for 6 days and it felt like 6 years. It's just, you feel like you're at the bottom of the dirt. There's no worse feeling than the county jail.
Well, and this is something people confuse the idea of jail and prison, and the real quick explanation of it is jail is where you go when you murder somebody. Jail is where you go when you get a DUI. Jail is where everybody that just did something shitty just came off of the street, and nobody's living there.
Right.
Now, sorry about the.
That's all explicit. You're good.
Okay. So prison is where everybody's living. And even if you're living with people that have done hard stuff, there's a mutual understanding that we're all living here together.
Exactly.
And
it's about respect, and it's a different environment, different population of how people act. I totally, absolutely agree.
I didn't get to self-surrender either. So after I was found guilty,
well, I was going to ask you, Sean, what was the time period? So they bonded you out once you got to the South Dakota 2 or 3 days afterwards. What was your time period of dealing with this whole mess?
I got a renowned attorney to take my case pro bono.
Okay, that's a big deal.
Tony Serra was his name, American trial lawyer of the decade, 1990s. And he's just this really, really cool guy that was just against the war on drugs. And I just happened to catch him at the right time and was crying I was crying in a jail cell in Oakland. And he got me out on bond, and 2 years. It was a 2-year process, which was worse than prison. The waiting to go to prison was worse than prison.
Yeah. I've I know. We went through 6 years of it, and it just is like a never-ending bad ending.
Didn't you just like at some point? I don't know if you gained anything. I didn't gain anything out of the waiting.
Mm-mm.
I almost wished that when I went to that initial hearing, when he said, "How do you plead?" I'd just been like, "Oh, guilty. Can we?
Mm-hmm.
Let's go." Because I'd have been about out
Mm-hmm.
by the time I went in.
Yeah, done. Right. You're right.
Yeah.
So you end up, it goes on for 2 years, and I guess they eventually ask, you've obviously got a choice if you're going to go to trial, which 97% of us don't that are indicted.
Right.
So did your attorney come to you with a plea deal, or how did it shake down?
No, it was so the day I got on bail, he's like, "All right, good, glad we got that done. Okay, let me let you know how this is going to go. You're going to prison. You definitely need to say that you are a weed and booze addict, because you're going to get a year off." He knew some of this stuff. A lot of attorneys didn't tell their clients, like, "Hey, you need to be an alcohol addict.
Exactly.
You need,
Right. Because that's about the only way you get a year off in federal prison. It's the only thing.
That was the biggest thing he did for me, was just tell me, like, when they ask you if alcohol and drugs played a role in your crime, you say yes.
Mm-hmm.
So okay. So he told me that, and then he did a bunch of delaying, which actually did allow me to get a lot of my affairs in order. And then it just kind of he filed a bunch of motions. But in the end, they basically said, drop all your motions, or we're going to supersede the indictment with a 10-year mandatory minimum. I was looking at a 5-year mandatory minimum. So he came to me and he said, "So are you ready?" And I was like, "I'm ready." And so we dropped all of our motions, and I just pled guilty and gave them all of my money, and got sentenced to 5 years. I knew that I was going to get 6 months off for good behavior, probably do 6 months in a halfway house / home confinement, and get a year off for the drug treatment program. And so I was going to serve 3 years.
Yeah, you did exactly the same thing I did. It's 3 years after the 5-year sentence. We both got the 5-year sentence. So, but you didn't get to voluntarily surrender. So you're the judge, and then they take you away, and you're in.
Actually, there's one little hiccup to that. Maybe it's not worth your podcast or anything like that. But after getting
everything's worth
down,
the podcast.
After getting beat down in that Oakland jail, losing a tooth, I had started the process of getting an implant put in, and it's a process.
Oh yeah.
They can't just like do it. And so I was like 1 month away from getting my implant finished. So I asked if I could have the time to get my implant finished.
I love it.
And the judge did allow me to do that.
How about that?
And so I got my gold tooth to go to prison with.
Way to be, Sean. Everybody needs a gold tooth to go to prison with.
Maybe I needed some currency in there. Who knows?
Exactly.
I did self-surrender to the marshals.
Okay.
But then I spent 2 months in the county jail just waiting to get transferred, waiting to get my prison selected, because there's that process. They have to select which prison you're going to go to.
Yes.
Placements, they call it. And so I sat for 2 months just waiting for placement, and then then I got to go around to like 7 states. Again through they call it diesel therapy, where they just put you from jail to jail to jail, eventually getting you to Oklahoma City, south of Kansas, where I was placed, where I sat for like another couple weeks, and then rode a bus up to Leavenworth.
Well, tell me, because now you've spent like 5 months in jail, the county jail, which is not good. That is horrible. So you make it through Oklahoma. They take you on a bus to Leavenworth. What are you thinking when you're driving up in this bus and see Leavenworth prison?
Well, I know I'm going to a camp.
You're hoping.
No, I confirmed that in Oklahoma.
I thought, but I say that shot as a joke because I knew I was going to a camp, and I even looked at it the night before because I did voluntarily surrender. But then when I got up to those steps, which was the wrong place to go on the big steps to Leavenworth,
they said go up to the big building.
Exactly.
I've got a story similar. All right, so our bus goes. I'm with a bunch of campers. Like we've identified ourselves and stuff. And I'm on a bus with campers and
real people, the real penitentiary. Yeah.
Yes. Right. And so the bus stops and he's like, all right, I'm going to call all the campers off first. I'm going to call you off by name. I call your name, get up here. And so he's like, and in alphabetical order, he's like Cassidy. Sorry, the only one at the top I could think of there. He's calling all off in alphabetical order. Passes the ends, doesn't call me off, gets to the bottom, and then says, all right, that's it. And all of a sudden, I'm like, oh no. And now you didn't have to do transportation, but maybe you know about this. When you're getting transported, you are shackled at your wrists.
Yeah.
You're shackled at your ankles, and your wrists are shackled to your waist.
Yeah, and Sean, unfortunately, I did get that treatment. It was in the middle of my prison sentence when I had to go back to St. Louis for a court. Yeah, so I got that whole treatment, and that is not a good way to travel.
Right, okay.
And kind of makes you feel like an animal, by the way.
Oh, man. I mean, trying to eat on Con Air. I remember having to take and shuffle my waist shackles up to the top of my chest so that I could eat the sandwich, but then remember that the water was in my lap. So I shuffled the waist shackles back down to my lap to grab the water and then shuffle them both back up, trying to hold the bologna sandwich and the water in my hands while I'm trying to eat. Okay.
Good
so
Lord.
Anyhow, I'm there's a name for this kind of shackling. I forget it. But anyways, I'm shackled. So I jump up and I'm like, no, wait. This is not what you're supposed to do, by the way, like as an inmate on a prison bus.
Right.
I'm supposed to be in the camp. And man, it's a really good thing that I actually was supposed to be in the camp, because then everybody that was going to the big prison started making fun of me, and they were like, oh, I'm supposed to be in the camp too. I'm supposed to be in the camp too. Whoa. And he's like, come up here. And he's like, what's your name? I said, McFarland. And he looks the list down, and he's like, McFarland. Nope. You not on here. Oh, yeah. And I'm like, and I'm like, no. I'm supposed to be at the camp. I'm sure of it. He's like, look, see? And then he flips through all the pages, and then somehow my name was at the end of the thing. And he was like, oh, you're supposed to be in the camp. Come on. And you know how crazy bureaucratic that stuff is up there? It's totally possible that if that wouldn't have happened at that moment, that I could have ended up going through the system, going into the big Leavenworth prison, and then having to go through some months-long bureaucratic procedure to get transferred to the camp.
Sean, believe it or not, there was a guy, when I told you I was going back to St. Louis and was getting shackled up, they threw a prisoner from Leavenworth Penitentiary in the van with me. And he said, oh God, he said, you wouldn't believe this shit. He said, I wasn't supposed to be there. And we were driving over to the private prison that was 5 or 10 minutes away. They put him in the wrong prison, and he'd been telling everybody he was in the wrong place. And they were saying, like you said, everybody says that. Everybody says they're not supposed to be here. But it took him, I think, a week and a half in Leavenworth Penitentiary until they finally put him over to that private prison. So that really does happen. I mean, that could have happened to you. If you would have just sat down, they probably would have processed you through and figured it out whenever they wanted to figure it out, if they ever would have. That's a nightmare. Man. Nightmare.
Yeah.
But when you, I mean, everybody's processed into the big building. So give me your thoughts. Give me your thoughts as you've been in all these different county jails. What are your thoughts as you're going into knowing that this is the place you're going to be?
I just want a bed. Just get every time, like as I was going through all the diesel therapy, every time you got processed into another place, you're in a holding cell, you're in a drunk tank, and it takes like somewhere between 3 and 7 hours to get you to a freaking bed.
Yes.
And like, so I'm sitting on a concrete floor, and I'm just like, I just want a bed.
Want a bed.
Just want a bed.
Please give me a bed. I talking about those drunk tanks. When I got up to Warren County Jail, they had me handcuffed for like 3 hours, and even the shift changed and everything. I thought, well, hell, maybe they're just going to keep me just handcuffed to this bench. So they finally put me in what you call the drunk tank. And the one guy gets up. There's 2 guys in there. One guy, he's just drunk as hell, gets up and pisses on the floor. Just pisses on the floor. And the other guy, I think, is somewhat normal. He all of a sudden tells me he's got farmland on Mars. So I'm like, holy shit. How long? And, I was in there for like 7 or 8 hours. And I thought that's actually where I was going to be, because I didn't know where I was going. They finally took me up to a pod, which wasn't any better than the drunk tank. But, okay, so.
Minus the pissing on the floor.
Yeah, pissing on the floor. That was crazy. That was nuts. And it already smelled bad in there. That didn't make it any better.
Yeah.
So
piss and orange peel.
So, okay, so you've been around everywhere, Sean. So you finally get into the Leavenworth camp. You finally get your bed and your stuff. What are your strategies now that this is going to be your home for a while?
Well, before I went to prison, I knew I did a lot of research. I knew I was going to end up in a camp even before I got.
Plus, you're a long ways from home, by the way.
Yeah. I was going to develop a farm business plan. I knew that.
Okay.
I knew I was going to have access to musical instruments. I was going to write a bunch of songs. I gave an interview to a newspaper because I was a regional, regionally known musician. I had a lot of interviews requested.
Yeah.
I gave a interview to a newspaper, and I told them something like, I plan on this being like a Buddhist camp. Instead of being surrounded by a bunch of Buddhists, I'll be surrounded by a bunch of prisoners. But like, I'm going to not have possessions. I'm going to be separated from the things I want to do, and I'm going to exist internally. And I honestly feel like I did that,
mm-hmm.
to a fair degree. There were hard days, but there were also days that I laughed with my friends, and days that I felt creative, and days that I read a book and enjoyed the book, and
Yeah, no, that's interesting, because I think one of the things you just let out there, I think, is key. And whether you're in prison or in life, you got to keep your mind active. You got to keep your mind, like you said, you were talking about a business plan and strategies, but you were also, thinking about your music, and that kept you being you. I think the guys that fall into a dark trap is that they become the surroundings and they fall deeper into that prison being institutionalized. Whereas what you're saying, Sean, is you kept being you in a different environment, but you didn't lose you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I tell you what, I think 3 years is like, I definitely started losing, friends and family connections at about like year 2,
mm-hmm.
Like people just stopped writing, people stopped answering calls, I think 3 years is like, 3 years is some kind of a limit where I could have maintained as well as I did, and I don't mean to disrespect anybody that did more time than me, I just mean that, like, one thing I decided while I was in there was like, man, some of these guys aren't going to change. Some of these guys are going to change. Some of these guys don't need to change. I honestly felt like a person that didn't need to change.
Yeah.
Like, I did something illegal. The only thing that's changed about me is that I'll never grow pot again.
Yeah.
That's it. The only thing that's changed about me.
Mm-hmm.
But if 2 years doesn't do it for a person, I don't know, kill them, kill them or lock them up forever. like these prison sentences that are like 15 years and 17 years and 12 years and 8 years. And like, what is that? It's not scaring people off from doing the crimes.
Right.
And so all you're doing is ruining these people.
Yeah. And families, like you said, you're forcing the connections to get lost, the families, their wives, the kids, and everything else gets more and more separated. I totally agree with, and the other thing is, I mean, if you're doing really harmful things to people, you're raping or killing or something, those people need to be away from society because they could hurt somebody.
Yeah, kill them.
Yeah, we're talking.
I mean,
about,
or whatever.
Yeah.
I'm exaggerating, right. but yeah. Sorry to cut you off.
Well, I mean, we're just talking about people who, okay, they're punished, and the United States is big into punishment. You look at Europe; they have a whole other kind of way of rehabilitation, but. I get it, punishment, but like you said, Sean, you drift that out for somebody who's a nonviolent person for a period of long time. You've really ruined everything around them and them.
And let's even talk about. I mean, any kind of nonviolent. So blue collar nonviolent, as somebody who grew pot, I some people would say I'm not anything like somebody who was selling meth, but I don't necessarily believe that's true. So even the guy that's selling meth, I don't want my kids doing meth. I don't want meth in my community. I think it's totally bad, and so by that respect, meth is different than weed. But you take this person that's sell meth, that's like it's their it might be the way that they feed their addiction, or it might be just their leg up, or both, or whatever. But you take somebody who already has, I'm kind of losing myself. I'm sorry about that.
I know what you're saying. Somebody who has issues already.
You take somebody who already is not very successful in the arenas of life outside of selling meth. And you remove all their family and friend connections from them. How successful are they going to be when they come back if they don't have some of the most basic life essentials? Mm-hmm. I mean, a lot of times you need to know somebody to get a job, to get a straight job.
You almost have to have somebody that believes in you and wants to give you an opportunity, because the guy that's the next job opportunity interview is not that guy usually. It's usually going to be somebody that believes in you or knew you or wants to give you the opportunity because you have some kind of connection with them. I agree.
And so you put that meth dealer in prison for 8 years. Mm-hmm. What's that going to do? What's that going to do for him? What kind of opportunities is he going to have? And that's just where I realized it was about year 2 that I realized, 2 years. That's it. Kill him, lock him up for life, or 2 years. Mm-hmm. Everything else is arbitrary. Yeah. After 2 years, you lose all sense of time. Like, how long have I been in here? How long am I going to be in here? I don't know. Yeah. I'm here,
Well, I think that the other question I was going to ask you, Sean, I know you talked about strategy of doing the business plan and playing music. Is that, well, I'm not going to answer the question for you. How did you handle hard days? Because there are hard days in prison and you are a long ways away from home. Did you have a way that you handled falling down into that prison? God, I got this much time left. I feel, I can't talk to so-and-so. I haven't seen him in a long time. How did you handle that?
I don't have maybe exactly the answer you're looking for, but I'll tell you that I'm a really positive person just in general in life. And I was positive going into prison, and I made positive friends while I was in prison. Good friends, people that I'm still friends with to this day, that I talk to on a regular basis to this day. And those friends, we did positive things throughout. We wrote music. I did what I said I was going to do. I wrote my business plan. I ordered my apple trees. I've got an orchard just about ready to come into production that I envisioned and planned while I was in prison. I wrote 60 complete good songs with the help of my good friend Michael Nowak while I was in prison, and I'm in a group that's performing those songs right now.
Yeah.
And so I did what I do, and
I think that's the.
I
was going to say, go ahead.
Let me say, so this is one of my biggest takeaways from prison. I realized this in prison, and I realized it out of prison. It was about halfway through or whatever that I realized, you know what? I have as many hard days in prison as I have outside of prison. I laugh. I gut laugh. Like I gut laugh probably 5 times a year. You'll get I can't control myself. I'm crying, gut laugh. You get that maybe 5 times a year out of me. You know how many times it happened in prison? 5 times a year. Mm-hmm. I was sad in prison. I'm sad not in prison. Mm-hmm. And I will say that although the types of things that I was thinking about, like, God, I don't want to be here another fucking day with this stupid fucking CO. Mm-hmm. The types of things I was thinking about might have been different. But I will say that I truly believe that the amount of happy days, the amount of sad days, the amount of laughing that I did in prison was identical to the amount that I experienced on the street.
Interesting. And I think, when I hear you talking about all that, the movie Shawshank Redemption, the Andy Dufresne, he's got the Zihuatanejo in his head, and that's the place he wants to go in Mexico. And, he chips through that wall for 19 years thinking that this is to his freedom. And he has it in his head, the bluest of the blue of the Pacific and in the old rundown hotel, and he's going to fix up the boat and take it out on fishing excursions with people. I think what you're saying, which is really interesting, Sean, is that your Zihuatanejo was the business plan, what I'm going to do with myself when I get out of here. But I'm envisioning it in my head as it all happens. And then your music also played a part in that, because those are things that you who you are, and you just continue to make that happen for yourself when you didn't have the freedom.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to say it a little bit different, that disagrees with you kind of and agrees with you kind of. I committed from the get-go to continue to be who I am in there, who I am on the outside, mm-hmm. to be that person on the inside. I committed that before I went in. Like, because if prison is the first time as a 40-year-old person or a 35-year-old person that you're dealing with conflict and struggle and hard times, and you don't know how to deal with them, well, I guess, man, I mean, that, like, you're fucked,
Yeah.
But if you've done real contemplation into your own emotions and know that you're in control of your emotions all the time, you're always in control of your emotions. You're out of so much. You're out of control of, or maybe not in control of your emotions, but what you do with your emotions, and how you choose to frame life, mm-hmm. how you choose to frame what's around you, mm-hmm. I know so many rich Americans, and I say rich Americans loosely, like, if you're working at Taco John's and have an apartment and a big screen TV, you're like one of the richest people in the fucking world. Mm-hmm. And if you want to frame yourself as a poor suck that doesn't have enough, well, I guess you can be that person. And then I know actually rich people that have a hard time looking at their life and thinking that they have enough because they know somebody else that's so much more successful than them. Mm-hmm. And so from the day I went in, because this is another, again, I'm before I went to prison, I framed a lot of stuff in my head. Mm-hmm. And one of the things I was thinking about before I went to prison, and I carried it with me all the way through prison, is if you were to cut out Leavenworth, around the fence line, and plop that in oh man, I mean, somewhere in rural Russia, somewhere in Africa, that fence should be keeping people out. Oh, you mean there's healthcare, all the food we can eat, musical instruments, TV, a warm bed, and relative safety. That's in there. I'll take that.
Mm-hmm.
I'll take that. So even as a prisoner in America, I knew that I was one of the richest people in the world, in the fucking world, the richest, most secure people in the fucking world while I'm in prison. And you frame that in your mind, and you can have that. You can be the richest person in the fucking world. Because like even there's somebody that's richer than Bill Gates.
Mm-hmm.
You know there is. You know what I mean? Like there's always a fucking another level.
Sure.
You know? So you can't play that game infinitely. I mean, you can play that game infinitely, but that doesn't lead to happiness.
No.
So I'd rather play the game of framing my world around me as always having enough, and knowing that I exist in a place of huge abundance and security. And yeah,
that's cool, because I think that's what you're talking about is mindset, and your mindset is what your reality is, and it doesn't matter where you are; it's what you've set your mind to, and that is then what you live, because your mind believes what you tell it, and it's almost. I know that sounds overly simplistic, but that what is the old Henry Ford quote is, whether you think you can or whether you think you can't, you're right.
You're right.
Yeah. So there's
right.
a lot to that, Sean. I mean, that's pretty deep. And I think there's a lot of nuggets there of anybody in any situation figuring out what the good stuff is and living in that space.
Do you know how hard it was to like call somebody on the outside and be like, "Hey, how was your day?" And be like, "Oh my God, it was the worst ever." And I'm like, the worst ever, huh? Like, no frame of reference for who you're talking to right now or anything.
Right.
Like, I'd rather talk about cool shit.
Yeah.
I mean, like all the time, I'd rather talk about cool shit. And I experience that regularly, like post prison out here, when people can't, people feel like their life isn't good, or that, they don't have enough, or like it's hard for me to have it's always been hard for me to have a bad day.
Yeah.
It's especially hard for me to have a bad day post prison. Like what? Everything I want.
Yeah.
Everything I want.
Well, let's talk post prison, because you and I have been out about the same time. Well, tell me about the day you got out. I mean, who was there? What happened? Because you got brought in the wrong way. what was it like when you got out that day? It's a totally different day.
So right before I went to prison, I connected with an old fling, and we started writing each other. I proposed to her on a contraband cell phone on Facebook Messenger.
Wow.
In a bathroom stall in prison.
I love it.
Then I proposed to her on a phone call.
Okay.
Then I proposed to her on a visit. And then when I got out, I got a ring and proposed to her. I proposed to her 4 times.
Love it.
But she picked me up from prison.
Okay.
We're living together today, married, have a beautiful kid. She picked me up from prison, and we went and I think we got Hardee's breakfast and drove up to the halfway house, which was 6 hours away back up here in South Dakota. And she dropped me off, and I started getting visits, and eventually got on home confinement and went and lived with her.
So tell me, I can just see it in your face, Sean. You're loving life, what you're doing. What are you doing right now?
So I planted that orchard.
Yep.
I put together a big orchard plan while I was in prison, basically comprised of these old world cider apple varieties to make high quality hard cider, unlike anything you can get in the store. The stuff you get in the store is made from leftover eating apples. And if you know anything about good wine, it's not made from table grapes. There's table grapes and wine grapes. But during Prohibition, and there's some parallels here with the weed that we could draw, but during Prohibition, the feds came in and cut down all of the cider making apple trees because they knew they weren't good. They're not good for eating. And then we pretty much never planted them back again. They would like on any sort of scale.
Okay.
Well, cider has seen this this boom in popularity, and the idea of a craft cider, a quality cider, a not sweet cider, a complex cider. This idea has gotten in the heads of some people, and I'm on the front edge of it. In prison, I put together a 2,000 tree order. The trees were set to show up after I got out of prison, but I didn't have the land for it. I really believe in manifestation, and it sounds really hippie, and I don't believe it in some like. I believe that if you intend to do something, you will surround yourself with the people that will help you get it done. If you intend to do something, you will do things. And so I ordered the trees knowing that I didn't have land for it, and was able to secure the land only weeks before the trees were scheduled to show up.
That's great.
Yeah.
They also call that laws of attraction too, where you surround yourself.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah. I think there's something to that for sure. Absolutely.
Hey, can I want to actually, we're staying on the same topic mostly. While I was in prison, I read about this dinosaur bone hunter, this guy that found this T-Rex called Sue.
Okay.
And he actually went to prison. And I remember reading about him and being like, wow, I would just give anything like to be an archaeologist. Like, that's just like some kid's dream that like I never let go of. And I just like, I wish I could go and do that, like even just for like, like I don't want to pay a guide.
Right.
Like
you want to go do it yourself. Exactly.
I want to go do it.
Yeah.
I ended up going and working for this farmer out in western South Dakota. And I ended up working on a piece of land adjacent to the piece of land where they found this Sioux, got permission from a landowner to search his ground for dinosaur bones. And I've been going back, and I'm right there. I'm right there. Just speaking about like these laws of attraction,
yeah,
right?
Yeah.
And I've been going back every year since. My buddies go out and go hunting for deer.
Yeah.
And I go hunting for dinosaur
bones. Have you found some?
Oh, Jesus. There's a hadrosaur leg.
Holy shit.
Here's a triceratops toe.
There's got to be like a community of these people that do this. Is there like a little community that are dinosaur bone hunters?
Kind of, but not like fishermen. These are all here.
That is unbelievable. Well, for the people who aren't seeing this, these are real bones that Sean is showing me, and it's unbelievable.
This is duckbill. These are duckbill dinosaur vertebrae. I started IDing bones. Here, hang on.
That is wild.
This is the end. This is the end of a Tyrannosaurus leg.
Oh my God! This is a big, huge bone.
I've got the rest of it in pieces, and I'm trying to figure out how to put it together.
Unbelievable, Sean. And what's weird is that it was kind of in your neck of the woods.
Well, I mean, like 5 hours from my neck of the woods. Like I like knew that it existed, but also like the landowners are kind of protective, and the only reason I got in is that I was friends with the farmer that sold me the land for my orchard. Asked me if I would go and harvest corn for him out west, and I was like, of course I will. I'll do anything for you. And while I was out there harvesting corn, I realized I was right next to the dinosaur bones that I'd been reading about in prison.
That is absolutely nuts. And I mean, you've got a lot of bones.
Oh, dude. I mean, like, I just pulled off a couple of my my nice pieces for you. I'm piles of bones.
Now, you have a boy or a girl?
Boy.
Yeah. So he probably loves that. You're digging up dinosaur bones.
So this is what sucks. He's 3.5 right now. And so he's just grown up around dinosaur bones. I've got him like sitting on the floor and like on shelves and like just like dinosaur. Like, could you ever touch a dinosaur bone at a museum?
No.
No. And I've got him laying around everywhere here. He's going to think that this shit is normal. He's gonna be like,
exactly. Everybody's got dinosaur bones in their house.
Of course they do.
Sean, that's nuts. That's crazy. I would never have thought that you had dinosaur bones in your house. That's wild, wacky stuff. I love it. Love it. I mean, and you read that book in prison. And you read that book in prison. How about that?
It was a magazine article. It was a magazine article, like Scientific American or something. And yeah.
So, Sean, what do you think's your biggest takeaway? I think you've talked about it a little bit of, you went through all this. You went through hell. I mean, you've went through a lot just before you got to prison. How do you feel like being out in life, and what's your takeaway from all that?
Dang, I don't know. I have three. I don't know. I have three big things that I'm feeling like right as you say that.
Okay.
I mean, the biggest thing though is life. Life is all about perspective. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And at the same time, there's only so much perspective you can have after a period of time. Like 3 or 4 or 5 years, I can imagine a guy can lose perspective.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. I don't have your big quote.
No, Sean, but you kind of said that before, is that a bad day out here isn't, you can almost put yourself back into the mindset, and it's really not that bad. It's right. It's all going to be okay. One way or the other. Freedom's good.
Yeah.
Freedom's good.
Freedom's good. Yeah. Freedom's good. I mean, like, I don't mean to tell you that it doesn't make a difference whether I was in prison or not. I just remember taking note of the idea that in general, my emotional state was nearly identical in prison and out of prison. Mm-hmm. That's
how you handle it.
That's not to say that it doesn't matter.
Well, no, nobody wants to go to prison, and nobody likes the fact that you don't have freedom. But how you handle that situation is really what you were talking about with your mindset and the laws of attraction, all the other things that you roll in there to really trick your mind into being able to make it all work.
Yeah, one other trick, and this is a little out of order for you. I don't know. You can slice it in or use it as is. Another thing that like really, just when you talk about perspective is my dad. I was raised military. I'm moving all around all the time. I'm around different people all the time, and my dad several times had to go, and he spent 18 months in Korea, on the demilitarized zone, like the border, where they're like launching missiles and shit. They're not landing, but they're performing training exercises. And my dad spent 18 months in a fucking war zone, almost war zone, away from his family, away from all of his possessions, with only a locker of goods, with a bunch of men that he wouldn't have otherwise chose to be around. Granted, through different circumstances, but
a lot of similarities, though.
But I mean, like,
you're not going to die. I mean, they're not going to bomb you in prison.
Fuck right.
Right.
And so my dad makes it through, and you can say, well, he chose to be there, right? Like, okay, fine. But then now all you're talking about is back to what we were saying, mindset.
Right.
If you can tell yourself like, oh, I'm choosing to be here in Korea, it's all going to be okay. Well, you can say the same thing. In fact, I did say that a lot about being in prison at Leavenworth. Every day I get to choose to be here. Every day I can choose whether I'm going to like walk out that back gate and like have the feds. I mean, that's still a choice.
Sure.
That was still a choice.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah.
Good stuff, Sean. It's good stuff. I appreciate you being here today. And I didn't have any idea that you were going to show me dinosaur bones. That was huge, unbelievable. But I love the fact you're living your life. You're doing things that you love. You're doing your music. You're growing these trees that you had in your mind, and making the cider. And you've got a wife and kids. And man, I'm proud of you. You're really making it happen. That stuff that happened, you're now stepping into. You're appreciating it all, and it's good stuff. Good stuff, man.
Thank you. Yeah.
All right, everybody. Nightmare Success in and out. Hey, if you haven't gotten anything good to read lately, try my book out, Nightmare Success. Thanks for being here today.